Guys, tech layoffs in the United States for the first 6 months this year just crossed 140,000. 140,000 people have been terminated so far during the first 6 months of 2026, which in its face, you may not be able to contextualize, but last year, during the first 6 months of last year, only 72,000 people were laid off in tech. That's a 94% increase in tech layoffs. And once to take this even a step further, AI, the amount of layoffs being attributed to AI is absolutely staggering. 2 years ago, 2.5% of layoffs were attributed to AI. Last year, 5% of layoffs were attributed to AI. This year, 25% of these tech layoffs are attributed to AI. That is a staggering amount. AI is now the number one reason for layoffs. And, there's different schools of thought. We're going to get into that a little bit today. But to sit there and say that AI is not for real, that it has no impact, to me is asinine and ignorant. But let's drill down even a little bit deeper here. Of all these cuts, 50,000 of these cuts over the first 6 months are just from 4 companies: Amazon, Oracle, Meta, and Microsoft. And in total, these 50,000 jobs make up 6% of their combined workforce. I think it's really important to kind of contextualize. When we talk about big tech, a lot of the value is attributed just to the top 7, and a lot of these layoffs are coming from these big corporations. Now, some companies like Block and Salesforce say that they're going and cutting jobs because the AI is so efficient, it's so good, that they just don't need people anymore. But the reality is there might be some other reason for these deep cuts. Because guys, listen, some layoffs are normal, and it should be expected there's going to be some of that. But what's got people so upset right now is what's happening with those funds. All those funds that used to pay for humans are being shifted into huge AI infrastructure projects. I know a lot of people like to say, well, it's because it increases the energy cost in this area. It creates problems with water. I think it's actually something a little bit more nefarious. But I think at its root, people are scared. They see all these layoffs, they see the headlines, they see these big tech companies saying that AI is going to replace you and robots are going to replace you, and people are freaked out, and we say, stop firing people and pouring all your money into these data centers, right? Like the big 4 hyperscalers, Amazon, Alphabet, Meta, and Microsoft, they are pouring over $725 billion into data centers and infrastructure this year. Almost $1 trillion into these infrastructure projects. It's kind of hard to just wrap your head around how much money is going to these big projects. And that capital has to come from somewhere. So where are the companies getting the capital from? They're getting it, from banks and loans. And when that dries up, they say, we need to fire people. We need to fire humans. And I think part of the criticism against this narrative is that, these companies overhired in the first place. And I think that certainly is true, but I don't think that they overhired at that time. I think based on the information we have now, based on the effectiveness, based on what AI can do, now you could say you overhired because the AI could just automate a lot of this stuff for you. And you might say, no, it can't, Mark, it's crap. I don't know what to tell you guys. I don't know what you're doing, but you're doing something wrong. Because when I turn on AI and I'm working with AI, it dramatically improves how quickly I'm able to work. It's writing blogs, it's creating workflows, it's putting together presentations, it's writing queries, it's doing coding for me. It's like doing all this, a lot of this stuff I'm not even that good at, but it's able to produce a product and I kind of look at it. You know what, I'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a moment. So just hold that thought. The reality is that AI is completely and dramatically changing the way that tech works. I think what's also interesting, another common thread that I hear from people on the channel, by the way, if you're new here, make sure you subscribe. 6 days a week, there's going to be a fresh video for you. And if you leave a comment, you can get pinned. I pin people all the time. I've done it in the past. I'll pin in the future. But one of the most common things that I see is, Mark, these layoffs are not because of AI. The companies are just blaming AI so they can show that they're forward thinking and they can get a stock bump. And, I think that's interesting. But what you might not know is that the companies that cited AI as the reason for terminations actually underperformed. They underperformed around 10% in the next 30 trading days following the announcement. I think there were a few examples. If I go back to earlier in this year, I covered some stories where a company would blame AI and then they would see a stock bump. That is not working anymore. That whole scapegoat of blaming AI, it doesn't work anymore. So I think that there's less reason for a tech company to say, well, we're firing a bunch of people for AI, so we can get a stock bump because we're forward thinking. That I think that companies, I think it's been kind of priced in. Let me put it this way. If you're in tech and you're not thinking about using AI into your software, it's like you don't exist. I could see what's happening between all the software that I use, any of the companies I work with. I'm doing marketing for a SaaS company. Every company is figuring, how can we use more AI to make our customers' lives easier? How can we use AI to make our employees' lives easier? And the reality, guys, is that any savvy investor is kind of, I think, factoring this in at this point. I think what we really are actually seeing here is a reshuffling in the labor that is needed from humans. Like, companies are not hiring customer service. They're not hiring HR. They're not hiring marketing operators. They are hiring AI researchers, ML engineers, AI product managers, data center integrations, they're hiring positions that are AI forward. And I think this is interesting because the positions that are being hired for now didn't even exist 10 years ago, at least not in the same way that they do now. These are completely new categories, and the payouts are huge for the people that can get in. And one of the trends we've seen a lot when we look at all the different companies we've been covering, just yesterday we talked about Monday. We've looked at ClickUp, Accenture. We looked at a lot of different companies. And the trend with all these companies is flattening the organization. They're flattening the organization and leveraging AI to fill in the gaps, cutting out middle management, cutting out layers, flattening it up. So there's less layers of bureaucracy, which makes sense. And what those leaner teams, these companies, are going and telling their teams, token max, use as many tokens as possible, use AI as much as possible, be more efficient, be more effective. I mean, we're seeing it time and time again. Today's just another example. Now, this strategy is not without its flaws, because we see companies like Klarna and Salesforce that go through mass layoffs that realize that they need to start hiring people back. There is a certain point where the quality control breaks and buckles, and these companies realize, well, we need to actually hire people back. So again, I've said this a lot before, before you go crashing out because you got laid off, just realize you could get hired back. You just need to maybe add on a couple new skills or a couple new even tweaks to your resume. I think honestly, a few small tweaks to your resume, a few small tweaks to your social media strategy, and you become much more hireable. And I've talked about that in the past. I'm not gonna go into too much detail here. But I guess the question I have for all the AI haters out there and the people that think that it's all smoke and mirrors is like, if you are in tech, or you work on a computer, do you think you could even get hired without having a baseline of AI literacy? Do you think it's even possible? I wouldn't hire anyone that doesn't have any baseline of AI literacy. It's absolutely crazy. If you don't know how to prompt, create context, or even just use critical thinking to look through I think this is another huge problem, and probably a reason why a lot of people are being fired or maybe scared of AI is they're just running a prompt, copying and pasting what they get, and then just presenting that. And that really devalues where you're at as a human. You have to, the other day, I was in a presentation, I was in a meeting with some leaders of the SaaS company I work with, and I was kind of presenting some of the data, some of the analytics I was getting, and there was a particular chart that I'd gotten from the database that the numbers just didn't look right, and I didn't catch it on the front end. I actually felt pretty stupid about it, but I presented and they said, well, this doesn't make sense. How can this number be larger than that number if it's further down the funnel? I said, you know what, you're right. Let me figure it out. Let me fix it. And I did. But again, that's a quick example of me not doing my due diligence. I'm a human being. But I think that, I think there's a lot of people that are going to put themselves in that position where they don't do their due diligence. They don't actually look at the numbers. They don't actually think critically, and they, you outsource your critical thinking to a robot. That's when you become very, very, you become less valuable. You're not going to get hired in that place. And I think there are two really scary things to consider as we look at the way that this new world is going. The first is that this is starting in tech. We're really seeing it manifesting in tech, but it's going to continue to move into all sectors. Any sector that's on a computer is going to be touched. Every single person, every single company. It's easy to look at tech and say, oh, well, I'm not in coding or I'm not doing this. Guys, this is going to hit anybody that's on a computer. You're in insurance, you're in fintech, you're in underwriting, you're in real estate, you're in accounting. It's gonna touch everyone. It's better to get started on this stuff. Now, I'm in marketing, guys. I can already see it manifesting. So I'm preparing ahead, I'm planning ahead, I'm becoming AI literate, I'm building my personal brand, as you can see. Like here on YouTube, we're like reaching hundreds of thousands of people a month, which is beyond the pale. It's really, really amazing. And by the way, always me, never fake, never AI. Something that's important to me. The second thing is that the SaaS apocalypse is real, guys. There are a lot of SaaS companies that are going to zero. And there's gonna be a lot of SaaS companies that are gonna come from nothing. You haven't heard from them. You don't even know their name yet, but they are gonna be huge. They're gonna have 4 employees, maybe a dozen, and they are gonna be absolutely smoking it. And I want to just highlight one quick, I think, term that people probably are not familiar with, and that's the difference in the way that SaaS worked in the past versus working in the future. We're moving away from SaaS being a system of record into being a system of work. You see, in the past, your SaaS product will store customer data, it'll store marketing activity, project status, then a human kind of reads the info, decides what actions he or she needs to take, and then completes the tasks. That is not the way that SaaS is gonna work in the future. SaaS in the future is gonna be the software is actually serving as the employee to write the code, contact the leads, build out the workflows, and the human is gonna go in and oversee this and lubricate the wheels. Again, you're removing multiple layers, and I think what we're looking at here is that, A, critical thinking and adaptability become very, very important. And I think this is where a lot of people are gonna struggle, guys, is that every human being that works within an organization like this is gonna need to think of themselves as a conductor, as an orchestrator. It's not like go out and just do the work. It's telling people, and in this case, telling AI and robots to do the work. How good are you at conducting, at seeing the big picture, is, getting out from above the trees to look at the whole forest, where as a lot of people are used to actually being in the trees, cutting them down manually, you gotta take a step back and oversee people. That's my prediction. What do you think? Type it in the comments below. If you've got a good comment, I'll pin you. I've pinned you in the past. I'll pin you in the future. And in the meantime, make it a great day. Appreciate you guys. If you enjoyed today's video, smash like, subscribe, and check out yesterday's video where we talk about what's happening at monday.com. And we talk about SaaS apocalypse. Go check out monday.com. Completely getting reshuffled on its head. Absolutely crazy. Go check it out. See you there. Peace.